there's so many different directions we can take this. I'll start with the betting line. So I have not looked at any of the betting lines for this week. You bring it up with Oklahoma, Kansas, and I am really good at, and I'm not a betting guy, odds maker, handicapper, nothing. I'm a complete novice, but I'm really good at, for some reason, when people throw me a game, I can usually say, okay, they're going to be about a 13.5 point favorite. And I'm usually within like a point. I don't know what I would have said about the point spread for this game because Vegas tends to take its time in changing its opinion on a team. They don't just knee jerk reaction. Okay, Oklahoma lost to TCU by 30 points. Okay, we're totally off the Oklahoma bandwagon, and we've totally adjusted our opinion of this team. They're usually not like that. It takes them a while. So if you would have thrown the Kansas Oklahoma game at me, I don't know what I would have said in terms of a point spread. And as you mentioned, I see Oklahoma early in the week at 7. You say that it's gone up from there, where I would think conventional wisdom would be that the betting public would bet that down based on the way the two teams have played. But we do know that Jalon Daniels, the Kansas starting quarterback, has been ruled, or I don't know that he's been ruled out for the game, but it appears as though it is highly unlikely that he's going to play in the game. They do have a capable backup, Jason Bean, who played the majority of the game against TCU, put up a ton of points. He's not Jalon Daniels, but he's been the starting quarterback at Kansas. He's a decent player and is capable. So, yeah, that's one aspect of this. Is Oklahoma's a favorite against a Kansas team that has played so much better than they have the last 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, the next portion of this is just that. Had you told me at this point in the season Oklahoma would be 3-3, I would think, okay, yeah, that's a disappointment. They're probably losing nail biters. Like the results aren't what we would expect, but had the last 2 weeks been 31-28, then I think Oklahoma fans would be disappointed with the results because they expected to be competitive for the league championship, but it would at least be understandable. It's a first year. Okay, the team's still competitive. They're still playing hard. They're still in the games. But you're right. It's just to take Nebraska as some kind of barometer. And Nebraska is not a good football team, but they don't get blasted by anybody. In this, 2 years of them losing by 1 score to everyone, and the great case example is them coming to Norman last year and losing by a touchdown. That's what they do against good teams. They play them really tough. And Oklahoma could have named the score in that game.
Right.
Blasted them.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively shut them down. Offensively scored, 35 in the first half?
Mm-hmm.
Could have kept it rolling after that. So you go from that high of beating not a good team, but a team that stays competitive with just about anybody. And then the next week, that Kansas State game was kind of what I would have expected had you said Oklahoma's going to have a down year. They're going to go 7-5. Okay. Yeah, that's about what I would expect. Kansas State, again, better team than Nebraska. Not a great team by any stretch. They just beat Iowa State by 1 point this past weekend. Kansas State's they're a top 30 team in the country.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have envisioned struggling looking like. Playing Kansas State, this back and forth game, and then losing it in the fourth quarter. But what we've seen the last 2 weeks is just, I was about to say unfathomable again. It's just, you can take almost any team in America and line them up against TCU and Texas, and they're not going to lose. They're not going to give up 55, and they're not going to lose by 49.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is, and that's why when we started it's hard. Like you say, we could take this in a lot of directions, and I mentioned it's hard to know where to start because at a minimum, Mark, with what BV believes in, what he instills in these kids, is is effort, is toughness, is physicality, accountability. And those things aren't, they were there in the first 3 games, but they haven't been there the last 3 games. So Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, and you know, just to go back to your betting line, um, yeah, I just looked and right now it's 9. Started at 7. I mean, and this is with Gabriel's, you know, availability unknown at this point. I mean, you would think that he would be ready to go, you know, after a full 2 weeks, but um, yeah, I mean, even with Kansas, I mean, you know, you had mentioned that Bean had an excellent second half for Kansas, threw for almost 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, did throw the one interception. But yeah, I mean, there's a drop off there, obviously, but not a considerable amount. So yeah, I don't know, Mark. I mean, I think things could get even worse if it's possible if they lose this game to Kansas. You know, I mean, Kansas is a much improved team, right? They're you know, so much better than they have been in the past. But I think just the mental side of it, losing to Kansas, I think is a would certainly not be surprising. I don't think to a lot of people, but still would be, you know, kind of a shot in the arm. And so yeah, there's and this is why you have to continue to go back. There's something intangible going on, um,
Yeah.
whether it's there's not belief in Ted Roof as the defensive coordinator, whether there's just they're just worn out because of the lack of the fit, or because of how physical everything was in the summer and in the fall, and these kids just aren't used to it, so their, you know, their bodies are wearing down a little bit, you know, quicker than um, things like that. So I don't know. I don't know, you know, honestly, if those are excuses or if that's reality, or what it is. And now you've got kids that are used to playing for championships, right? I mean, some of the newer ones, you know, maybe not as much, but you know, the guys that have been there for a long time is um, they're used to playing for championships, winning championships, and now that they're, you know, in the thralls of a mediocre season, how do they react to that? Particularly if they start playing some young guys, how do these you know, these older guys handle that? What does the locker room look like? Um, so yeah, I don't know, you know how that will, you know, continue to look as this season goes on, but I mean, the good news is they still have the number three. They actually have the number 3 rated recruiting class in the country still for 2023. So, I mean, I don't know how much damage the rest of the season is going to do.